What's up, y'all? It's your boy Adam Blackstone, and I'm here with Jaymz Hardy-Martin.
Yes,
Today we are diving into some amazing mix tips for live and studio. Check us out on the sessions right now.
Nothing left to lose. Do my bad habits lead to need I stare in space? And I know I lose control of the things that I say. I was looking for a way out, now I can't escape.
My name is Adam Blackstone. I am CEO and president of Basic Black Entertainment. We specialize in live music staffing, and a lot of the questions and a lot of comments that I get are about the sound, the BBE sound. And so today it is my pleasure to introduce my friend, my brother, who is a big part of that sound. He has done everything from studio engineering to running Pro Tools, playback to live mixing for all of my recent shows, specifically Ed Sheeran, the Oscars, BET Awards, Soul Train Awards, Sunday's Best, the Grammys, so many things. Give a warm welcome and applause to Jaymz Hardy-Martin.
appreciate you. We got this Ed Sheeran session here. When you hear the word Ed, you automatically think, guitars. They just go together. You never think of Ed and by himself, especially the way he tours. It's Ed and guitar. So I want to show you guys something real quick. I think it's kind of cool. I mean, you can be the judge of this, but we're going to bring up this guitar track real quick. So we got the guitar there. I've got a couple of effects going on there. I got some processing, some EQ, some compression. We'll get more into that a little bit later. What I want to show you is this. So what we're going to do right now is just mute the guitar and listen to the effects. Got two effects going on there. We'll mute the verb. I've got a pitch shift on there. This is the pitch shift without my EQ. I'm not going to tell you what the EQ is, as you can hear. I'm going to put my EQ in on the pitch shift. Thins it out. It's a little detail that what I'm looking for is I don't want the guitar to get cluttered. I just wanted to add some width to it. So, some people might have not have thought to put an EQ on there because, like, oh, I got an effect, a go, but it's a detail you may miss out on. So we do that. I also threw a verb on there. Here's a verb with the EQ on it. Verb without the EQ on it. You hear all the low end and the rumble we got going on? Now imagine that on top of everything else going on in the mix. The guitar, you're like, it's kind of muddy. It's not really present, all of that, because you've got a verb that you added when you're like, oh, great, I need a verb for my guitar or whatever the sound is, but it's not really enhancing the mix. It's actually cluttering up. So in, out, in, out. Throw both of those in there. We've got some nice clean effects. We bring our guitar back in. Throw that right back into the mix. Run that back. Got effects. No effects. The point here I'm trying to make is that those are two small details. Two details people may not pay attention to. You sometimes listening, you're watching someone, things on YouTube, they're like, oh, I did this, I did that. You go home, you do it. Things come up, you're like, damn, it didn't translate. What's going on is that there's some details that are always left out, or some details you may not be paying attention to, that are making your mix go from a C mix to an A mix, or A mix to a D mix. Same thing with the restaurants out here in California. That's why they got the sign out there. Some restaurants are paying attention to the detail using the Clorox. Some people are just using soap and water. When you're mixing, you gotta pay attention to these type of details if you want your mix to go to the next level, if you want your clients to be happy, so forth and so on. So that's kind of what we did there, and that's one of the first points I really want to stick home with you, because you can go home and throw this verb and this effect on your guitar, and you may not get that result, because what you're looking at is the reverb, the effect, the plugin, and all that. The key point is you have to pay attention to the details of what you're doing. Don't just do it because someone else did it and think it's going to work or translate. It's the detail. So we're going to go through a few things, a few points, and remember that one. Detail is the first one. As Adam told you, my name is Jaymz. I'm an audio engineer. I do all aspects of audio. Live studio, as you can see, live in studio sometimes come together. Sometimes we're tracking, recording. I mean, I can come to your house and set up your DVD player and get you some surround sound. I'm a Renaissance audio person because I pay attention to audio detail. I'm gonna reiterate it and repeat myself a lot because I want you guys to leave with not, hey, this is the best plugin Jaymz uses. I want you to pay attention to the points of how Jaymz is Jaymz so you guys can become who you are. Whole purpose of being here is to show you guys how making a great mix doesn't just start by opening up a plugin and go. There's a process prior to that. So once you get in front of the desk, console, live, or studio, that there's a thought process going on to get you there. When we're done and I show you some of these tricks and all that, again, I don't want you guys to go home and copy and mimic everything I do. What I'm here to do is to show you this process so that you guys have the potential within yourself to come out with these thought processes and make mixing and make your career your own. As he told you, history, I've done live, done studio, studied in Boston, came to LA. First job was as a runner. Like, as they probably told you guys from an education experience, you're not going to come out and you're not going to mix the Ed, you're not going to mix this. And the reason is because you have to validate yourself. And that comes over obviously over time. When my first job as a runner, I wanted to get in the studio right away, just like you guys are anxious. You come here touching on the desk, you get out in the real world and you're running errands, you're picking up mail, you're getting food and all of that. And a studio doesn't trust you and believe in you yet because you haven't shown yourself proof from an educational standpoint, from being the experience and worthy, because you go in the studio and they have to depend on you to keep these clients coming back. And if they don't know they can trust you or depend on you and that you'll pay attention to the details of things like whether it's patching something or whether it's just something as simple as remember condiments when you run errands for someone, you can't get in the studio. So again, back to the point of detail. So paying attention to detail, whether you're a runner or whether you're an assistant, that's how you're going to move up in the ladder of doing things. And again, that you pay attention to detail early on, it will translate later on in a mix and things you're doing. I nagged my first studio. I was working at Skip Sailors. I wanted to be a runner right away. They said it's going to take a year. Within 3 months, I was able to be an assistant and move into that because I paid attention to the details of runner. So much so that till this day, I still remember Genuine wants grape jelly with his Popeyes. Because I locked that in. That was like a detail at the time. Those first 3 months, he was in and out the studio every day. I wanted to make sure I got that. So I got in the studio, and within a year, because I, again, paid attention to detail and I understood, which is my second point, I understood what my client wanted, whether it was Genuine or whether it was the owner of the studio, whether it was anybody I was assisting as an engineer, I understood what they wanted. And, that was, you have to understand and grasp that coming into this mix, knowing that a person's not calling you because they love the way you made something else sound. They love the way the final product is. They don't want you to make their stuff sound like that. They want you to make it sound good the way they come across. Like Ed's guitar isn't going to sound like Slash or Guns N' Roses. I'm not going to go throw all of those things on there. Ed wants my mix or his mix to sound as good as I made Slash's guitar sound. Not that I worked with Slash, but you follow me as an example. So it's the same thing. It's the same thing with studios, same thing dealing with clients as well. So after a year, Skip Sailors, that's when I started racking up a lot of studio credits. You can see those on the website, as the introduction said, I've mixed credits on Tupac, Neo, Mary, list goes on. And from the studio, I transitioned to live because my third point, I did not have the experience or the education in live. So I jumped on a church gig. I wanted to jump out there with the artist, but obviously a church is a lot more forgiving than an artist. You mess up at the Grammys, I'm never getting on the Grammys again, And it's live, you guys are talking about me, I become a meme, it's all bad. So I jumped into a church gig, did some live for a couple years, and picked up that experience while still doing it in the studio, and that led me to my first actual real gig with Faith. This comes to my third point, the validation thing. I was able to prove myself worthy at the studio, but then someone recommending you and co-signing for you, as we would say, you really have to live up to that. So you have your details, you know what a client wants, and then someone goes validates you and says you're good to go. You have to and be ready and be prepared to come through, because without that validation and once you let someone down, that door is almost closed and you never get it again. So I jumped on the first gig with Faith, and just to show you how important that point is I thought I was good. I get on this gig, do a 2 weeks rehearsal, running monitors. Everyone knows kind of from a live aspect what monitors is, making sure everyone on stage is good. This time we use the ears wedge. I get through rehearsal, everything's great, I'm ready to go. I get my day sheet for the next day for the tour, and on it, there's a bunch of stuff, and then one of the things at 3 o'clock is glam. I'm an engineer, I'm confused. I'm like, okay, I thought I knew what I did. I thought I knew what's going on. So I pulled myself to the side and spoke to the MD, and because again, you don't want to mess up once someone validates you, you know. So ask the questions, get the experience, because if you don't have the education, the next thing is experience. If you don't have the experience, ask questions. There's nothing that can replace time unless you ask questions, get the experience from someone who has that experience. Pull them to the side, and again, you don't want to let people down. So I'm like, listen, I appreciate you giving me this gig. I'm a little done over my head because there's this glam at 3 o'clock. I don't really know what I'm supposed to do. I'm running monitors. I'm not really ready, yo. What do we got to do at 3? And he's, for those that don't know, glam is hair and makeup for an artist, you know. But I'm so green at live, I didn't know, and I didn't want to let anybody down, you know, because you're only in competition with yourself, and you know you want to make sure if all these other things are falling in line, you got your details, you know what the client wants, you know, if someone validated you, but then you get down to the education and experience, and you don't know what you're doing. All these things connect, just like in the mix. The guitar connects to the lead vocal connects to the drums. You don't want to have a big old kick drum and then this tiny snare because it's all connected. You have to pay attention to every aspect of these points and these things in life and in a mix. You overbalance, imbalance one, you're gonna have an imbalanced mix. And you're like, why is it so much lower when I get in the car and listen to this mix? It sounded great when I listened on the phone, you know, because you've got to imbalance. So fortunately enough, I got through the glam part of rehearsal, moved on. Ran into Adam a year later, and as he told you, it's just been rolling ever since because I kept those points in line. I paid attention to detail. You know, I'm constantly educating myself and then learning from other experiences. When Adam calls, I kind of know I have the relationship, or when anyone else calls, I know what they're looking for because, you know, I don't necessarily go out and jump on a Mary show and mix it the same way we may do playback for like a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, et cetera, et cetera. You know, you have all these tools and you just run with them and keep going with them. Details, knowledge, education, and make yourself worthy of being validated. You don't want someone to validate you and then you let them down. You know, let yourself down at home when you're practicing and learning this stuff and playing with the plugins. But when you get out there, just make sure you always boom, 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 staying on top of that.
The focus today for what Jaymz is showing you is for Ed Sheeran's Tiny Desk. Through quarantine, Tiny Desk had become a big part of our music culture. You know what I'm saying? And that's every genre of music, from R&B to hip hop to folk to jazz. I just watched a classical one. I just watched also Camila Cabello. Me and Jaymz talked about having like the mariachi band playing with her. I just watched Young Thug on Tiny Desk. You know what I mean? So it's like these things where, you know, Tiny Desk started in Washington, D.C. to be this intimate library experience of this acoustic thing. Because we weren't able to physically go see and touch one another, music was our avenue to touch everybody. And so Tiny Desk, NPR, was gracious enough to extend that concert series out for people to basically do what we call these days self-tapes, meaning that you don't have to fly to their facility to do their concert. They're sponsoring the concert by what they were calling these Tiny Desk at Home series. There were some big Tiny Desks this year, real big. Rick Ross, Young Thug, Jasmine Sullivan, Chris Bodie, Dua Lipa, okay, cool. Jack Harlow was cool. Bieber did a killing Tiny Desk, yep. That Peaches went viral. Dante said Rakim, 5 years ago, he would have never done what they call a Tiny Desk. Some artists that I work with, that me and Jaymz work with, that my brother Dante worked with, they didn't even know what that was because they didn't have to be a part of that. But once COVID hit, it's like, how do I still reach people with this music? So hence, we get a phone call from Ed Sheeran. We have been working with him throughout the summer. As Jaymz mentioned, his live element is normally just him on the looper pedal, if everybody's familiar with that. He don't need no band. He's doing 60,000 stadium like Jay-Z and Beyonce by himself. So the fact that we got this call to actually put a band together, and then this is a big deal and a compliment to Jaymz, is that they said, you guys handle the mix. We don't even, we trust what we've done so much during the road that you guys handle it, turn it into us, and we'll approve it or, you know, give you some notes or whatever. So this Ed Sheeran Tiny Desk came out, everybody, and it surpassed 3 million views in 2 days because they were so excited. The industry was so excited to hear him. I would like to say they were more excited to hear him with a band.
Yeah.
Is multicultural up there, you know what I'm saying? Him not being American, that's a big deal for him to come here and say, like, I have these incredible musicians from the United States that are rocking with me. As you can see, once you get a chance to watch it, he bigged us up throughout the event. And so today we're concentrating on how we translate that Ed Sheeran sound that is normally, as James stated, just guitar and wonderful, and that we had nothing to do with because he didn't need us, you know what I'm saying, a need in quotes. But now how this has surpassed the viewership to say, wow, he sounds even better with this band, with this backing band. And a big part of that, because there was no audience there, is how we perceive it to our ears. James is a big part of that, so we'll be digging into that session.
Looking at this mix and it being a live recording in a sense of we're watching a video to it, as a comparison to an album where you're just sitting there listening and your eyes are closed. This is one of the rare times where I say there's points in this mix where you're using your eyes to mix, because you're looking at this mix, and if you're visually watching and something doesn't match sonically what you're seeing, you're like, oh, something's wrong with the mix, you know, because your eyes aren't matching what you're hearing, so the mix can be off, no matter how good it sounds. But if it doesn't really match visually, you have to do that. So jumping straight to the lead, as I did show you the guitar earlier, I want to show you something I did on the lead. I normally don't do this, but looking at, we'll play a few seconds of the record Shivers.
When they say the party's over, then we'll bring it right back to the car. On the backseat in the moonlit.
What I want you to notice is that what you're looking at. You're listening, everything sounds good, it sounds great, but Ed's in a room with a bunch of people. He's not on a stage. You're not at home laying on your bed listening to Ed. You're watching Ed, you're watching a band around him. So he's encompassed in a room. So what I did here is I took an effect, my verb, my slaps and all that, and I actually put it right on his vocal channel. So I'm sending all of Ed's vocal into this effect I have going, and I played with the wet dry mix. For those that don't know what the wet dry is, that's, you know, you can 100% wet, 100% dry, a little bit of both. And I did this instead of normally like I did on the acoustic guitar. On the acoustic guitar, I had 100% dry, and then I used the aux and sent some of the dry guitar to the reverb. On Ed's vocal, I'm actually decreasing a little bit of the dry signal and compensating that with a wet signal, because I wanted the vocal to sit more in the room. I didn't want a full dry vocal in your face and then effects around him. I wanted it to feel more like you're in the room with Ed. The mix is more in the room. Again, I probably wouldn't do this if it was a album you're listening to, but because you're visually looking, I want you to feel like you're more in the room with him. And I think I did a good job at that. So we'll listen to the vocal blended up in the room. Jump to another song just to show you, give you a little bit more, because he's giving a little more emotion in this record.
And even though I know this fire comes with pain, even so, and just the same.
Now what I'm gonna do real quick is I'm gonna bypass the effects just to show you how, and I can solo it to show you how.
Make it rain. Oh, make it rain.
We throw
Dry.
it's really dry.
Make it rain down.
Now we throw the effect in there.
Make it rain. Make it rain.
It gives him more, like I said, he's just more in the room. Now, as far as the process on his vocal, I got kind of cheated a little bit here and got kind of lucky. A lot of times when you mix, you don't always get to be in the recording process, or you don't get to sit in the room. Someone just sends you files and you got to mix it, and you're kind of hearing, and you don't know how good the things was recorded. I was fortunate enough to be part of the recording process on this taping, where I was actually the monitor engineer and I was overseeing the other people tracking it. So I had an advantage of the best tools you can use to listen to is your ears, obviously. It's better than speakers, better than headphones. So I got to actually stand there, talk face to face with Ed, hear how his voice sounded, how he sounded in the room, how when the band is tuning and warming up, how everything's bouncing around in the room. So then when I get back to the studio, it's like, okay, I can hear all those things, and when I hit play here, I want to match that again. If I call it a cheat, but it just happened to work out that way. But mixing anything live, anything that goes with video, those are things you want to keep at the forefront of your thought process in doing the mix. Looking at his vocal, like I said, we've got an EQ, we've got a compressor, standard stuff here. Again, I don't want you to get too caught up on, he used let's see right here. We got the basic Pro Tools Avid EQ. We've got an 1176. Then something I do want you to notice though, and check it, is what I have here. You've probably heard it 1,000 times, is a frequency dependent compression. It's another cheat code, whereas just like the guitar with his vocal, I wanted him to sound like he did in the room, but because he's so dynamic, we have this song, as you can hear again, he was a lot of yelling, a lot of screaming, a lot of high pitch stuff, and then other times he's softer, like we go back here and Shivers, he's singing.
I took an arrow to the heart.
You take that vocal,
I never kissed a mouth that tastes like,
and then you jump to something like
make it rain.
the dynamic and where his vocal register are two totally different spots. In the beginning, he's really soft. There's let's say like a lot of low end maybe going on, and what I don't want to do is thin his vocal out, because again, like I said, I spoke to him plenty of times in person, and he has, your ear gives you a nice smooth sound. So with frequency dependent compression, what I'm doing is over here, if you see this this number 2 where I have here, click on this, I'm in the low 200s, high 100s. What I'm doing is that whenever that frequency just gets too heavy, the compressor will take that out. When there's not a lot of it there, it'll just leave it in there. So it gives me a balance of, instead of me, hey, every verse or every hook, hey, I'm changing the EQ, it's kind of doing it for me. It's a nice processing way of processing a vocal to keep someone's natural tone there, so they're never too thin or they're never too thick or too heavy in the record. With the highs, what I'm doing is I'm just honestly adding air, because again, I got the cheat, and even if I wasn't there, I could see the microphone he's using. On that microphone, I just wanted to add just a little bit of high and a little bit of, again, air to go into the reverb, and it, for me, it's kind of like I'm adding a little bit, but then I'm also taking a little bit away. And what I mean by that is, if you look at the order of my chain processing, I have that here earlier in the chain, and then if you come further down, then I have a de-esser that's de-essing a little bit of that. So I'm boosting some of it, but then at the same time, if too much gets in there, I want to take it out, because it's now I'm kind of like doing the opposite of what I was doing on the low register. I'm leaving some in there, and then when too much comes in, I'm taking it out, and now at the high end, I'm adding some, but when too much comes, I'm using the de-esser to take some of it out. The de-esser is, depending where my frequency is, right? I have this at a 7K. What it does is suppresses anything from that frequency and up once it passes a certain threshold. Your point of entry, I guess to say. So whenever the frequencies get over this point, the de-esser will grab them and suppress them somewhat. So I want that air there, but at times, like when it gets really high, I don't want too much of it there. Go ahead.
Where do you put the frequency compression on the chain?
That varies depending on detail. Another key point about detail, I have a general EQ, then I have my compressor, then I have the frequency dependent compression. That isn't the rule of thumb chain. It's what works for you. So just the same way I took the reverb, muted it, unmuted it, listened to just the reverb by itself, what you may want to do is you find some frequency dependent compression and you have an EQ, then you compress it in that, you put it first, and it may not sound that good. So then let's say move it over here and listen, see A/B it, see what the difference is. Because it may have worked here in this chain because of the mic I recorded in and the room I recorded in, but then you get on there and you realize, okay, well, Jaymz did it like this, let me do it like this. No. I want you to think and process and look at the detail and be like, okay, well, if I move it over here, well, damn, mine sounds better than the way Jaymz' vocal sounded. It's like, it will vary, because, again, the point of me being here isn't to say, hey, use this F6, use the frequency-dependent compression. It's to notice the detail of what you're doing and how is it improving, or is it making things better or worse. Because you'll go in and you'll be too focused on, oh, I got to use this, I got to do that, and then you'll overlook the detail of, oh, this is actually better if I do it this way. So you're listening to that. So the key point takeaway there is using frequency-dependent compression instead of just thinning out the vocal. Because on the first song, he sounded really low, so I need to take all this 200 out. And you get to the third song, and you're like, man, this vocal sounds terrible.
James,
Yes, sir.
So we're clear, because frequency-dependent compression is confusing. The top part that you're opening up means that you're letting the highs go through. You're not actually adding highs, even though it looks like it.
I know exactly what you're confused on. This thing EQs and does frequency dependent compression. And on the low end, I'm doing frequency dependent compression. On the high end, I'm just EQing.
Oh, you just EQ.
Yes. This number 5 you're talking about right here?
Yeah.
I'm not compressing anything at there. I'm just adding some 12, 14, or 15, 14, 15, 16K there.
Okay.
But over here, when you click on this, as you can see, right here, see this threshold here? So when I, so when I play this, see, once we come over this threshold here, we'll do it again. Now I'm taking some of this frequency here out. Whereas over here on, number 5, this threshold's all the way up. So I'm not frequency depending anything. I'm just boosting this 15K here.
Copy.
Yes.
Could you just go through your your first EQ and compression before you send it to that?
Sure, absolutely. In this chain, I started with the EQ. Most live things, especially vocals, I always do a roll off because, as you can see, he's in a room with another bunch of musicians playing drums. I don't want a lot of low end kick drum and all that type of bleed going into the mic. So I roll off, and the Avid EQ for me isn't very strong. So even though you may see we got like 2 dB here, 3 dB here, 2 dB here, to me these are all very small adjustments. They're not as aggressive as the visually they may look, because now when dealing with actual mixing, this is the part where you're using your ears, because we're trying to fine tune this vocal or whatever. So it may look ugly, it may look funny, but if your ear says, okay, when I put this in, it sounds better. When I take it out, it doesn't sound as good, then you've done a good job. So from there, I jumped into a compressor. One of my favorites is 1176, but that's just the warmth, the harmonics I get from it. Not doing too much compression. I'm not a big compressor fan when it comes to lead vocal, and I'll show you why, because this is another detail thing. If you can see this lead vocal track here, this is my volume automation. I'm writing. I'm not gonna just come in here, compress, and let it roll and let it go. Same thing with how I talked about the vocal EQ. Was like every song and every part of the song, there's some low tones, some high tones. So that's why I use the frequency dependent compression, because I can't I could, but that would be beyond work, is automate, okay, how much I want low and less, low and low, but I can automate the overall volume. You can cheat and get a quick rough mix, and I can go back here and throw this 1176 on here and, squash the mess out of him, but you're going to lose the life. We got 5 songs in here. We got 5 dynamics, and it may seem tedious, but it's a detail. Someone is calling you, and you need to prove to them that you're worthy of that, and you want that. You want to come through for them. So this is the stuff you're doing. This is what you're getting paid to do. Sometimes you're not getting paid to do it because you got to prove yourself worthy, but those are the kind of type of details you do that, not just throw a plugin on there.
And real quick, just to piggyback off of what he said, one thing he said really quick is that it's 5 different songs. So like the texture and the sound of Ed's voice, the texture doesn't change, but his approach to each song is different, which is why, and I never even knew this. I'm watching this session, I'm like, dang, that took a long time. Like, you know what I'm saying? He riding that thing like a fader. You know what I'm saying? He's like, as if he was, okay, down, okay, now, so then he got a couple squigglies in there, like, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, when we're doing Bad Habits, which is like this almost, EDM trap joint, is different than Make It Rain, which is this D'Angelo soul, which is different than Visiting Hours, which is a folk Johnny Cash type of song. You know what I mean? So that's why, and like I said, this is even new for me to see that, those volume automations, I didn't even know he did that. And that's a big detail. We're gonna keep saying that word. That is a big deal when it comes to what you see specifically when you're listening to music. You know what I mean? It sounds like it's just like this. If you watch it, his vocal like this to you. If you listen to his vocal like this, now we open in this session and look what he had to do to make it sound even the whole way. You know what I mean? That's pretty epic.
Do you write that on a fader? I'm sorry.
Sometimes I'll do it by hand.
Yeah,
I'm a little older, so I'm a studio guy, so I started on a SSL or what that. So you miss that sometimes. I have a controller there at the house, and back in the day it was keep rewinding, rewind the verse, and you're doing that because it was on 2-inch and you're automating. So same thing here. But then other times I'll sit there and write it with the mouse. It just depends if I'm in the mood or whatever feels efficient. So we got a vocal, we got a guitar. Those are the two main things. Everything else is just kind of a fall in place thing. Like I said earlier, it's all about things connecting. Whether like I said, we go to our drums and we got what we got in this session. We got 3 guitars, right, including Ed's guitar. We got bass. We got a keyboardist. We go back to this first song. We even have a horn section over here. We jump to Make It Rain. If over on your far right over here, if you can see, we have a small choir. We also have that same choir here. So before I even get into all this plugins and stuff, the biggest thing I do is space. Who can not reiterate space more? Like in times of COVID, everything's like 6 feet. So in the mix, you want to kind of like have 6 feet. I'm giving everyone 6 feet. So let me jump to this. This might help you a little better to see. Like I'm a big panner. You got to pan everything. And panning gives you space. It gives you everyone their own little corner of the mix, so everyone can be heard. And again, we're on a visual mix, so everybody can be seen and heard. Because there's no point in we're playing this song. Let's see, like and Make It Rain again. Obviously, you got Ed, but you got bass. You got 2 guitars. One, I have them panned visually, which would make more sense. But you can always hear each person, each guitarist. Got a keyboardist over here. You got a whole choir in the back. That alone, before I even do any kind of EQing or anything.
Make it rain. Even so, and just the same. Make it rain. Make it rain down low. Make it rain.
I just want you to notice that in that 10 seconds there, we had the backgrounds and the choir over there singing. The camera goes to them. You can kind of hear them nice and clear. Then we come into the hook and you have Tim over here on guitar. He's giving you that. You hear it over there. Then once you jump into the hook, you have Clay over here on guitar, and that's sitting over here. You can hear that. Before I EQ, like I said, EQ, compress, whatever kind of fancy plugin you want to throw on there, you have that panning in that space. So everybody's happy. Everyone's got their mask on. Everybody's got their instrument going, and they're happy. They're in the mix in your face. Another trick about that too is you can have everything in the center, and before you even touch the fader, if you play with the panning, sometimes you'll get more gain and more level because you got 2 people on top of each other. You go like this, it's like, oh, I can hear you now. So keep those type of things in mind, and that'll also clear up the mix instead of trying to, hey, let me do this, or oh, let me EQ this, or oh, let me change that. Those are some simple type things. Okay, so let's guitar things. Okay, we jump into let's see. Let's jump down here to 2 of my favorite songs in here. We've got a up-tempo, Overpass Graffiti, and we have Visiting Hours. There's a couple of things I want to point out in both these songs, in both these mixes, that kind of like important to me. And it's me trying to translate for the musicians or the MD. Okay, so this was a new song. It actually was released when it wasn't released yet when we taped this and recording came out. So obviously in mixing, you wanna respect and pay attention to the original. Again, this is the first time Ed's done this song live and had done it with a live band. So there was a little bit of live element, and we have some of the original drum track. We want you to hear the live drums. I don't know if you ever heard the actual real record. Obviously that's not we have a blend of 2 sounds here. Might be giving a little too much away, but whatever. We have a real snare, of course, that you see the drummer playing. But then we also have, where is it at? Our sample snare. For me, when I was doing this mix, this is what I did. I was going with the album, and I went like this, and we'll play it again. I had the mix like this, where I had the sample from the album up really loud. But you heard the way it was, where it was more of a blend, where we had more of the live. My point here is this, that as an engineer, you got to understand, again, you're going back to what the client knows and wants. I'm here just to do a service, do a job, to bring the thing to life for whatever they want. At no point, whenever mixing, should your ego or what you think is best should get in the way of getting what the client wants. You know, we're here as mix engineers because we know how to push the faders, or we know how to make the EQ. Like as he said earlier, he didn't know about the reverb return and, you know, or all the automation panning. But at the end of the day, all those things I'm here to do, but I'm not here to produce the record. Ed sat down, did this thing called Adam as an MD, or to translate this stuff as live, and he wanted certain things live. So sometimes people will end up losing the gig, and you'll never know you'll lose the gig because there's enough engineers to go around, as where you'll get a call to do on a gig, and you may bump heads too many times with the producer, or bump too many times with the artist, and you have to put your ego and what you want aside. You're there for a service. Imagine going to the restaurant and you know, like, yeah, I want a cheeseburger but no onions, and they're like, oh, no, it tastes better with onions, so we're just going to put the onions on. You're like, no, I don't want any onions. You know, and they're like, nah, here's your burger with onions. And as an engineer, if I could have been like, well, this represents the album more. I want this sample thing to be up more instead of it being live, so it represents the album more. It's like, no, I'm going more for live. It's like, cool, no problem. Boom, you do that. That's a detail. That's, again, going back to my other point about knowing what the client wants. And then 3, having the experience to know your lane and know what you're doing, because you'll come out of school, or you may have all these accolades and, oh, well, I mixed for this person and that person and all of that. And the client doesn't care. You're working for me right now. I don't care what they wanted or what they do. So those are other things to keep in mind in mixing. No matter how good your mix is, if the client, the person you're trying to satisfy, doesn't like the way things are, your mix is trash. You had a question?
Yeah, actually, when I was here and showing the vocal, because you boost up the air frequency,
Mm-hmm.
then when he sang it was like hush, like really hushing sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Why you want to keep that details? Why you make you thinking like, because sometimes I was hearing some vocalists have this like hushing to sing something.
Mm-hmm.
I would cut off, like using something, cut off a little bit.
Well, 2 reasons. One, that's how he sounded when he was singing harsh. It was like authentic. And then 2, the song, that particular song, Make It Rain, there was like pain in the song. So I didn't feel like it should be 100% as smooth as, you know, maybe like a Hush Little Baby lullaby. You know, the songs Make It Rain. So the part of the emotion, like another artist I work with, Mary, is people love her records because of the emotion and the pain that you can get through it. That translates into the song. So with that, once I added those highs, and then as you could hear, like you said, it got kind of real raspy a little bit, and it's a little bit harsh up there, but it kind of like felt good, because it felt like painful just a little bit. If I rounded it off and made it real smooth, it's like, well, he doesn't really mean make it rain. He like, I want it to drizzle and then be sunny, you know, and that isn't what we're trying to, you know, capture there. We want it to make it rain, you know, it's thunderstorm, lightning, you know, the whole monsoon, you know, and you come in, you got a sore throat, all of that, you know, and so that's why I did that and left it like that and didn't take it out later on. On Overpass Graffiti, if you listen to it, it's a very up-tempo song, but what he's singing about is very, it's sad, or kind of like, it's like a breakup a little bit.
The cards were stacked against us both. I will always love you for what it's worth. We'll never fade like graffiti on the overpass. I know time may change the way things were, but I remember the way we were. You were the first full stop, love that will never leave. Baby, you'll never be lost on me.
As you can see, he's lost a girl or whatever, but you know, if you just listen to the music, it's very up and bright, you know, like an up-tempo thing. So in mixing it, I was trying to, again, messing with his guitar and then messing with the 2 guitars, trying to bring that brightness in it, but at the same time keep that vocal there, so you recognize, oh wait, we're we're supposed to be sad a little bit. You know, it's like it's what is it, like ironic, I guess is maybe the word I'm looking for. You know, and when I got to that point, that's when I knew, okay, I can move on to the next part of the mix. Just real quick, on a engineering nerd tip, just to show you, almost on all the channels, I just used just a standard channel EQ. I'm an SSL person, so I just threw a bunch of SSLs like on our drums and all that. Like I said, I can go through, hey, this kick sounds like that, but you're not gonna walk out here and then use that EQ on every kick, you know. So it's kind of what you're comfortable with when it comes to some of those basic things. Don't get caught up in, oh well, this is the new EQ or the new type of plugin and all that. You use with what you're comfortable with. I've been using SSLs for 20 something years, so that's kind of like my plugin of choice when it comes to like just dialing in drums or EQ, standard gate, so forth, so on. And it was the same thing with the guitars. Again, I was fortunate enough to be in the room with these musicians, and I know these musicians. They take a whole bunch of time and pay attention to detail like I do in making their sound. So it would be foolish of me to come in here and spend 15, 20 minutes and jump on the guitar and be like, okay, let me change all of this and then add all these effects because it's already processed. Like, for example, we jump on, we'll jump to...
I want to go back to that too eventually. Like, please don't change my bass sound. When I do a session with y'all in the future and y'all producing and mixing these amazing records, like, make it sit where you want to sit, but like...
His favorite plugin is the C6.
What's that?
On bass.
Yeah,
on bass.
No, he's exaggerating. I hate compression. Like, I hate compression because I feel like for what I do on bass specifically, it's in my hands. So I'm playing dynamically. You know what I'm saying? So some note might have a crescendo and I'm like, dun, 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 dun. But if you put in a C6 or a C4 on me or, you know, whatever, it's like you don't even get that from me. Now I'm just a synthesizer. You know what I'm saying? And so Jaymz is really good at being in the room with us. Like I said, we calling it the cheat code, but, you know, just letting people sound live on record. So think about that when you're, you know, doing instruments specifically. You know what I mean? Now, we're not talking about a sample in this sense. We're not talking about something where you reworking it in Ableton or you flipping it for it to have a texture. We're actually talking about, you know, I call these musicians specifically for their sound. So I want that to translate through when you see and you watch it.
Real quick, and before I jump to that, the very next song, like I was saying, on these guitars, no processing, but I mean just standard EQ baby compression. Out. You know, just brought it to life just a little bit. I didn't really change who he was or sounds or anything, and the same thing with the other guitars. Where it was, I think this one is Tim here. He's just slight changes. I didn't add a flanger, a chorus, or some extra reverb and all that because they the same way I'm at home practicing, the same way you're at home practicing. They're taking time to put their sounds together. So, like I said, just to reiterate, it'd be foolish of me to over detail something, you know, and it's again knowing what the client wants. Even though each musician is their own person, they're all individual clients. You know, they all came here, put in the effort to come give Ed the best they got, and then I go in the mix and I'd be like, oh well, I got this new chorus that'll be dope on guitars, you know, and you're like, and you ruin everything, and everyone's wondering what's going on. So keeping it simple sometimes is the best thing. And just hear it all in context.
I was stuck, the engine stalled, and both of us got caught out in the snow. Alone. There were times where
You can hear all three of them. You got Ed, you got Clay, Clay and Tim, you know, and all three of them are sitting there in their mix because we went back to the painting, the detail, just enough so they sit in the mix. Nice and easy.
will never fade like graffiti on.
I don't know, if, to me, as soon as it came in, you could hear that live snare to give it that live feel, which is kind of what they're looking for, which is why they liked it. Because, again, we got 5 different songs. Same band, same instrumentation, but totally different feels for all 5 of the songs. Like, yeah, we'll just play the beginning of how it starts. There's even a steel guitar in this song just for this particular song, and you see he's over here in the corner.
Visiting hours, so I could you swing by and bring the news that she's getting older? And I wish that you'd met her.
We even have Adam on an upright bass on this song. The last few songs he was on an acoustic bass.
From you, I just stay a while and we'll put all the world to rights.
But you hear the vibe compared to all the other records he was playing. So obviously, again, taking that approach, still respecting everyone's instrument and detail and all that. There was a couple small things that I did. We threw a steel guitar into the mix, which made it feel. We brought the choir back in again. We jumped down to the choir. Where we at? We got about four microphones, 4 tracks. We got the background singers and we have the choir. So one trick in dealing with live is sometimes we stack stuff. We go back, we do some overdubs. Things we're tracking. Because you get in there, you got 6 people singing with the room with the band. So, you're going to get a lot of bleed. But if I'm trying to get more level or whatever, we went back and went back and recorded them without the band playing just to get a couple more to make it a little thicker, a little bigger. So, we get that big choir. Let me bring it up real quick. I didn't do too much. Again, you keep it simple because it's a tiny desk. It's not an album. Again, you're looking visually. If I had all this processing on the vocals and it sounded like, like Grand Symphony Hall, you're like, well, that doesn't look like what I'm hearing. And you're like, this mix is trash because my ears, my visual, and the sonics aren't matching. So let's jump here, right? And all I'm doing here is, again, I took my simple EQs. Like I said, I use SSL, so nothing crazy. As you can see, I'm boosting a little highs, a little bit lower than the air, because I'm not looking for air. I'm looking for more highs in their vocals, and a little sharpness, which is in my 5/6K to give it some a little bite attack. And I did the 5/6K thing because I went kind of big on the verb here. And this is how generally I normally would mix. Like I told you on the Ed, I put the plug-in or the effect right on the channel. With this one, I wanted a lot of that dry because they're in the room, and I wanted to add a little bit of that bigness of that verb. Specifically, the verb, like I said, don't get too caught up on what the verb is, but I just went for a big, semi-big hall room. Hear the difference now once I throw the verb in there. Without it. Just, and you kind of hear it at the end of all the phrases, just to add that and to the record, because that was the type of record it was. Obviously, I wouldn't use that on some of the other songs like the Shivers or whatever the case you have. And again, it's keeping things simple, keeping things clean. And someone may ask, okay, well, how come you didn't EQ the reverb on this one? It's because I wanted the lows, tenor, the reverb. I wanted the altos and sopranos reverb. I didn't want to have just the altos and sopranos in the verb. I needed the tenors in the verb, so I needed all of that. So I did more of the EQing actually on the channels themselves. As you can see here, I rolled off. Well, we got 120, 130. Not too much, because then if you go too high, you lose the tenors altogether. So, like I said, that is, again, listening, paying the detail, deciding by using your ear when and where to do stuff. It's not using the EQ reverb on everything because that's what Jaymz did, or you saw someone on YouTube did. It's not using the verb. It's picking and choosing when things sound better. Like I said, it's just a matter of putting things in, taking them out. Am I improving this mix or am I making it worse? When I brought added the little bit of EQ to the guitar, did the guitar sound better, or am I ruining the mix? Am I messing up the vision, or am I adding to the vision?
So
Okay.
How do you get that focus in your high end? Because you have so many things that have high end.
Okay, it's a good question. I don't always solo stuff up. I'm soloing the stuff up here just so you can hear what I did in and out, which would actually bring me to going into another point. Is I sometimes mix with a lot of stuff on. It's when I'm fine tuning, I may solo something up to hear, okay, what am I missing, like I did with the verb, because it's like, okay, I turned the verb on, put it in the mix, and it's like, man, that doesn't sound, what did I just do? What did I add to it? And it would be the same thing with the vocals. I've got 4 channels of vocals. I know where the tenors were sitting, altos and sopranos were sitting. Okay, as a whole, I know I want to add a verb to it. I know I want to roll off some low end. I do that while the track is playing. See how that sounds in the mix. Okay, now I want to fine tune it. So then I'll jump in and be like, okay, I got more tenors here, so I may not, like you said, I may not want to add as much high end because in the room the tenor doesn't sound like, you know what I mean, and so forth and so on. So to the point is that you listen to the stuff how it sits in the mix, and then when your ear is telling you something doesn't sit right, then you go in and start fine tuning. You know, so if you're like, for me, my approach on something like that was like add the verb, add a little high end, but not air. And I did it, listen to it in the mix. Okay, I can get this a little clearer. Okay, let me check my panning. Okay, that helped, but that's not perfect. Then I say, okay, now let me solo this stuff up, because at the end of the day, when I give this out to you, you're not listening to just the choir, you're listening to the mix. So if it sounds amazing soloed, but it sounds like crap in the mix, you know, it does. I can't call you like, no, just solo up the choir and then it'll be good. You'll love it. Right. So it brings us to my next point, which maybe I should have led with. When I'm mixing, what I'm listening on matters. What you guys are listening on matters. You know, you don't want to run to the store and get, like I use, let's say Master Dynamics or Sony headphones, or you got NS10s, you got here the HS80s, or you're like, oh, my mix would be so much better if I had these at the house. No. You have to listen to what you're mixing on your everyday thing. So before I send stuff to him, I always listen to it on my phone. You know, I just downloaded a new album this morning, and I listened to it on the phone. And depending what I'm listening for, you can tell, because your verbs will come through here, your delays will come through here, your low end will come through here. You will hear your low end, but you may not feel it. Now, you will know you have a good mix going into the car if you can hear your low end on your phone or your computer speakers, and then to jump into the car. One of my killer mixes personally to me, I mixed actually on my in-ears, and then I listened to it on the phone. On the computer speakers. I didn't even have to go to the car, because it felt and it sounded so right here. I knew it would translate theirs, because we listen to our computer speakers every day, or your laptop or your phone every day, your AirPods. So don't be scared to just mix on whatever. Like NS10s have been a staple in the world, not because of they're the best sounding speakers. It's just they let you hear everything. And if you can make these crappy things sound great, everything everyone else has, whether, like I said, whether they're at home with the 5-point surround DVD thing going, or you're on your AirPods or the AirPod 3s or your Sony things or your phone, your Android phone, whatever it is, it's gonna sound good there. So I want you to use the logic inside of you to get a good mix. Don't go following, hey, I gotta have this new speaker. Hey, I gotta have this new that. You listen. You've been mixing your whole life before you even came to school here, because you listen to music. And if I go like this and turn around and keep talking, everyone's gonna be like, well, man, this vocal doesn't sound that clear. You didn't have to graduate MI to figure that out. You can hear it. So it's the same thing in mixing. If you can tell right away if you're listening to something you're used to listening to. You've had your ears your whole life. You've had your computer or your phone probably almost your whole life, and you know what something sounds good on it. You turn it on and you're mixing, you're like, man, those background vocals sound way in the back. I didn't want that. Let me go back to the drawing board. Not go to Best Buy or wherever and buy some new headphones to make it work. It's you. It's not the equipment. It's you. You know? You had another question?
Yeah. Some of the techniques that you use to make that low end hit on phone speakers.
Okay. But that's how you know. That's how you know. That's how you know it's right, because I like you, because you're like I don't feel the low end when I listen to it on my phone. You're not gonna feel it, because there's no subwoofer there.
Exactly.
But the frequencies and all the harmonics coming up there, I'm gonna hear my kick drum on here. I'm gonna hear like I Live in Lane, I Love Future. I'm gonna hear a lot of 808 stuff here, but I'm not gonna be in my kitchen with this right here, and it's not gonna rattle my feet at all.
Absolutely,
but how do I get that?
Yeah.
Let's say it's just a kick drum, and you just want the kick drum to thump through.
Right.
So obviously, you look at a kick drum, you're thinking low end, but the kick drum has all the frequencies. You know, you have your attack, you have some mid range and punch, like Bad Habits, his favorite song. We'll jump right here on here. So we'll do this just for cheat sake. We'll bring up a visual. Look at this is just the kick drum. As you can see, we've got low end, which is hitting first, but you have some attack here too. As we know, the lower the frequency, the bigger the wavelength, so it's gonna move a little bit slower. The higher one, it's coming in and out right now. So you take something like this, and we're hearing some more low end here, but you still hear the kick, right? You hear the high, you still hear the low. It's not hitting as hard because this speaker doesn't have that low end in it, but you're still getting it, because what I'm doing here on this kick, for example, is we'll just do this. Well, actually, this one has more of my low end. You know, I'm kind of layering. You caught it right there as I sold one from another because, again, the mix isn't about the one channel. It's about the combination of everything together. So like, there's that high end that you'll hear on the phone, and then here's the low end you'll hear on the phone. But then when you get to, we'll jump to the mains. Now you're feeling it.
Absolutely. So, but is that a sample that you put?
No, that's the drummer. That's the drummer right in there playing. And just take it a step further, just to let you know that, or to show you that it's not add a bunch of low end, We've got two kick drums two kick mics. We got what we call an in and an out. So for me, I like to use the in more as a tack because it's closer to the beater.
What kind of mic is the in and what kind of mic is the out normally?
We used in is a condenser. The out would be a dynamic. And as you can see, I just added that high end, not the air, but the high end to give you more attack. And I took out a little low mid on the end. Then we jumped to the out. Actually, okay, here's the Jaymz trick I'll show you. I do this all the time with his stuff and even the two mix reference. Here's on the out, I boosted that what you're trying to feel. And you're like, how do I get that to translate? This right here is that frequency, like I said, we come down here on these 10s. You hear it a little bit, but you're not really feeling it. This is my feel mic. It's the boost here in the low end.
Was that 50 or 60?
No, lower, like 50, 48. It kind of depends. That's how you get that in the chest. But here's a Jaymz trick that this is one of the things I'll show you today where you try it. I'll tell you just straight up, try it, mess around with it, do it. I love using this. The R bass. You have to play around with them. Don't throw 44 on everything, but you can throw the plugin on there. But we'll bypass it real quick. It just adds a little extra, punch. That's the night and day difference between that and, as we know with our low end, all that stuff matters when you're living with bass. Kind of marries together. That's how you get stuff to punch in here and there.
Could you talk about like your order of operation and what you start with when you get files sent to you? Like, do you start with drums? Do you start with bass?
No, I start with everything. Like I said earlier, it's a mix. So I'm doing the spacing with volumes and panning. That's the first thing I'm doing. I got to cheat in this one because I was there for the recording. We did about 2 or 3 live shows together. So I kind of had a head start on what we're looking for because I mixed everyone's ears. I got to hear it, how it sounded at the show. And then obviously I could go on YouTube too. So I was very familiar with the music. When you're going to mix anything, whether it's a familiar artist or a new artist, like I should reiterate this. You know, people respect the reference, respect the demo, because again, that producer came to you with a rough or whatever, and they just can't fine tune it. That's our job. Again, back to the whole knowing what the client wants, understanding what the client wants, and using your experience to give the client what they want. That's what we're here to do. We're not here to, hey, I'm gonna make this my own, like I showed you with the snare and the sample. It was his idea to do that, so I stepped to the side, easy, no problem. I can make that balance there, so it gives you a live feel. And it doesn't matter what my opinion was on that. It's just to make his vision come great. So when you guys listen, it's like, oh, he's a genius. That sounds amazing. All of the credit there. So in that approach, it's the same thing. I listen to that demo and I just play with the pannings and the level. Again, because it's a live, I've cheated a little bit in the sense of I'm paying more attention to the visual to make sure my audio matches my visual instead of like a album approach where totally close my eyes. Don't look at what my EQ looks like. How does my EQ sound? Don't look at what effect I'm using. If it's 2.5 or 2, it's how does the verb sound? You know, and that would be the difference for my experience from going from a live to a studio mix or even in a live concert mix. The number one thing, you can go up and have a trash mix. If people hear the lead vocal live, it's a cheat code. Most people are going to walk out happy because they heard the lead vocal. You can have the drum smacking and the keyboard and the bass smacking. If they can't hear that lead vocal, it's like worst engineer ever. You know what I mean? It could be the best kick drum sample for eternity, you know? So there's different approaches as an engineer, as mixing, and what we do as engineers is we take the learning concept of frequency and experience and education and apply them to each one. But understanding that, okay, there's a certain client I'm satisfying in each scenario. Like I said, in a live situation, it's the client is the audience because they're the ones paying the money for the ticket. And if you want to keep working and you want your artist to keep working, you have to make sure the audience hears that vocal because everyone's coming in here to sing along. You know, in the studio, getting the mix, it's getting everything to sit, getting that producer and that artist's vision to come alive. They're the client there. So you just start with your levels in your paintings and then go from there, you know. Like I said, you can watch 1,000 YouTube videos to see, okay, I'm gonna color code this, I'm gonna use this plugin, I'm gonna do this and all that. But I want you to make it your own, but just respect those things of watching the detail, satisfying the client, not yourself, and then using each experience and each experience to make it your own, and you use that thought process to figure those things out. The question was, when I'm listening back to stuff, do I do Bluetooth or do I always make sure it's hardwired? It's one of those type of debates where it's, you know, Bluetooth versus hardwire or wave versus MP3, you know, 48, 96K, you know, all the sample things, but we know everything comes down to what, 44, 16 or whatever. For what I'm doing in checking a mix, I don't mind whether I'm just playing it out from the phone. I do always download a wave, but I don't really mind if I'm listening from the phone or when I go to the car, I may Bluetooth it because I'm no longer listening for like that mastering aspect. I'm listening to the mix like a trick when you guys were asking about like my vocal rides and all of that. If you're like this and listening really, really hard, you're always gonna find something where you're never like, oh, it's never perfect. At what you want to do when you're back checking the mix on the phone or whatever you're listening to is you want to kind of listen as a consumer. Like I sometimes even have a conversation with someone while I'm listening, and it's when the things start to stick out or poke out is when let me go fix that real quick, or this caught my ear, why did it do that, you know, and that's how I'm checking the mix. So whether it's on a Bluetooth or whether it's just direct line, those really don't matter for this part because at that point of the mix we're fine tuning, doing like the final touch thing. So, but obviously, if I'm mixing, I would never Bluetooth to the NS10s or the HSAs. You know, of course, I'm hardwired and all of that. You know, I want my full, heavy, thick mix because, of course, in that kind of scenario, my kick won't translate if I'm Bluetoothing because you're going to lose that low end.
Question. Before you play the whole song,
Mm-hmm.
Do you do the 4-button in 1176 trick? And can we hear the 1176 work on his vocals? Because I can hear
Sure.
between bypass and on and why you like the sound of it.
All right. We'll start with everything in, and then I'll solo up the vocal just so you get a vibe of the song.
Every time you come around, you know I can't say no. Every time the sun goes down, I let you take control. I can feel the paradise before my world implodes. And tonight had something wonderful. My bad habits lead to late nights and then alone conversations with a stranger I barely know. Swearing this will be the last, but it probably won't. I got nothing left to lose or use or do. My bad habits lead to white eyes staring space, and I know I lose control of the things that I say. I was looking for a way out, now I can't escape. Nothing happens after 2. It's true, my bad habits lead to you. Every pure intention ends when the good times start. Falling over everything to reach the first time spot. Started on the neon lights and then it all got dark. I only know how to go too far. My bad habits lead to late nights and in alone conversations with a stranger I barely know. Swearing this will be the last, but it probably won't. I got nothing left to lose or use or do. My bad habits lead to white eyes staring space.
All the stuff we talked about earlier, you can hear the paintings, you can hear the instruments, you can hear the dynamics in his vocal. To address the compression and how I'm compressing here, we jump here real quick before I close this out. Listen to him.
I can feel the paradise before my world implodes.
The 1176 obviously is giving us more gain, a little more pull up. Let me bring the actual up so you can see how much compression is going on. So you can actually see the compression, how much we're grabbing.
Conversations with a stranger I barely know. Swearing this will be the last, but it probably won't. I got nothing left to lose or use, or do my bad habits lead to white eyes staring into space? And I know I lose control of the things that I say. I was looking for a way out, now I can't escape. Nothing happens after 2. It's true, my bad.
You can look at the meter, but you don't hear it.
No,
right?
Crazy.
You know, you see what I'm saying? Like the meter's grabbing, coming, going, and grabbing, going. So this is like I said, visually you're mixing with your eyes, but when you're mixing, you're using your ears. You know, if you look at that meter, you're like, oh, that might be too much compression, because a couple of times it gets all the way down to like -10. But when you were listening and looking at him, it was never like, oh man, it choked his voice up or anything like that. You know, because I have it on there, like it's just enough to grab him a little bit. For me, I love the artifacts, the warmth that the 1176 gives, especially the UAD brand. Not plugging anybody, so don't go use this on everybody's vocal again. I just always want to reiterate that it's the what you're looking for. I was trying to add a little more body, a little more depth, keep him warm, and try to keep him in pocket. So then when I go to do my automations, I know certain things will just, it kind of sits in there a little bit, but it's not too much, because we'll do this like just exaggerate it really fast.
I can feel the paradise before my world implodes. And tonight had something wonderful. My bad habits lead to late.
You see, you can already start to hear like the difference, like that. That's not sweet.
I barely know. Swearing this.
What's your attack and release?
Oh, I gotta put it back. It was a slow attack. On a 1176? I'm always quick. So I just overcompress by jumping in there like that and all of that. But you could immediately hear the difference. And the meter was sitting down a little bit longer because my release is too slow and all that. So again, it's using your ears. Those are the times when you're using your ears. But for a visual aspect, you know, you always mix with your ears. But from a visual thing, when you're going into the final things with the panning and things like that, be conscious of what you're looking at, you know, whenever there's video involved. I was jumping back and forth on the speakers real quick just to show you that how the mix translate. You know, like I said, you're getting more feel or whatever because it's type of speaker, but you're panning, and where the vocal was always in front, that happened whether we're here, whether we're up here, and you can hear the quality of the different speakers, but the quality of the mix doesn't change. Your panning still goes. You can still hear your effects. The guitars are still present in your face, and again, that just starts simple, as you saw. It starts with simple, good instrumentation, good musicianship, great MDing, and then you bringing those things to life for a client.
When you're dealing with a situation like this where it's a tight setup,
Mm-hmm.
can you talk about the relationship of like bleed, especially when you're doing more compression on Ed's vocal?
Mm-hmm.
Drums was coming in. I can kind of tell, you know, like the drums, sometimes the snare or like the hi-hat may be picked up by another mic. Do you really go and talk about details? Do you go in and maybe like, you know, gate all the background vocals or the horns or things like that?
Good question.
And also, do you have any room mics?
I didn't use any room mics on this because it's
so many open mics.
Yes, and it's if it was a live audience thing, maybe. Again, this goes back to what I said earlier, which is why I stress these points. Is it's a detail of, like I said, I listen to everything. And then when I'm starting to have problems, I start fine tuning that. I can go in there and like super gay everything and do all of that. But I was also, like I said before, I had the advantage of being there for the tracking. So I mic'd the drums. I was doing the mic the drums. That's Ed's vocal mic he uses. So I could go online anywhere or go to any concerts, or I did shows with him. So I heard how he sounds on that mic. You know, I was there with the choir. So the micing is key. I know it's like a lost art form because a lot of production is just done in the box, but micing's good. It starts at the beginning. If I have the kick drum and this is the kick here, and then I got the mic way back here, and I'm like, man, it's kind of boomy, it's kind of roomy, you know, I got to hear all those things, so I got an advantage of doing that here in this. And in the room when they played together, they sounded good. I didn't have gates on it because my ears are just, again, your ears, your best listening medium. So I'm in the room listening, they sounded good. So I get in the mix to clean up the mix and the details. There's certain things I did. So these blue tracks are on my drums, right? So of course when I wasn't instrument wasn't playing, because as you saw, he switched back from kits on this song. He's on this kit, and then over here on this song, he's on this kit. You know, setting up. So obvious things. I muted those mics when we weren't using them. You know, but when it came to the actual like this song here, I've got gates, light gates. So you know, nothing crazy, and I'm not gonna go in and like take out every sound in between. That little bleed of the rim shot, that's not gonna mess up the mix because he's playing a drum kit. He's not playing a kick drum, and he's not playing a snare. He's playing a drum kit. So you don't want to go in there like, oh well, you know, like do something like this. Let me make the gate too tight. You know, it's like sometimes some of those things can really get lost. Cause to be honest, the low end I added in the kick kind of gives me some low end for the rim shot because the mic is down here and you know it adds that. So again, I'm mixing with everything together. It sounds good. If there's something that's starting to bother me, then I'll go in and fine tune. Like if I take, hear how the kick drum is ringing now? See? That's what I want to do to improve the mix. I'm not ruining the mix. It's just a small detail to enhance the mix. You know, we don't need the extra ringing of the kick drum. To answer your question, those are the small little things you're doing, but you do it when it's all together, and then I may solo here and there to fine tune because the mix is everything. The mix isn't just the kick drum by itself. So.
What did you do to take the ringing out?
Oh, I just put a gate on there.
Oh, okay.
The same gate I was messing with earlier. So. Imagine you miss all these details adding up, and then you send in your mix. He's like, "Well, what the hell did Jaymz do differently?" You know, it's because you was in here rushing to get all this stuff done, and I'm going one track at a time. But I listened to the whole drum kit together and realized, okay, all I need to do is just tighten this up a little bit. I don't need to take all this out or EQ all this. It's just those small little things, and that makes a difference. So again, like I said, at the end of the day, it's how everything's sitting together and paying attention to the small details. Don't get too focused on this plugin, that plugin, or this sound or that sound or what this person does. To show you what I do, for me, I know the way I mix, how I mix, and I know you guys see it a lot. People have a whole bunch of different things they may throw on their master bus. For me, this is what I do almost on a lot of my mixes. And it kind of like helps with mastering. For this, I threw a little high end on it. So let me play, go back to that Shivers again.
That guy, I wanna kiss your eyes. I wanna drink that smile. I wanna feel like my soul's on fire. I wanna stay up all day and all night. Yeah, you gotta see it like me. I love it when you do it like that.
What I'm doing is adding just like 3 dB at like 5K on up to the overall mix. And that's just like my style of the way I mix leading up to that mastering bus. And as you can hear, it makes it a little different. And the point of me showing you that is that when you get to the end and you think you're always done, complete, just check one more thing. Like I said, are you improving your mix? Or are you making it worse? And a best way to do that too sometimes is instead of always rushing, because it's good to be efficient, it's good to be fast, but you don't want to be wrong. So take a break. Like I know you've done this. If you've done any production, you do something the night before, it sounds amazing. You get up in the morning, it be straight trash. It's the same thing with mixing. You don't want to start mixing a record for someone at like 5 p.m. after you've had a day of ear fatigue and going on. And if you do, you want to at least wait till the following morning to reset to make sure you are where you need to be. You know.
What EQ is that you have on the master, and can we hear it again with everything?
Yep. It's
What is that?
It's a Mag EQ. It's another UAD plugin.
MAAG.
Yeah. It's like this little buddy, like the GM Jordan Massenberg they use here.
Yeah,
it's
like GML.
Yeah, the GML. Yeah, same thing. And in comparison to like when I was showing you the Pro Tools one, I like this one because it's for me it's a little more chiseled, a little harder. You know, you don't have to do as much. You know, like with the stock EQ, sometimes, you know, you may have to grab like 6 or 7 or 8 dB of something before you're like, oh, now I'm hearing something. With this, all you need is a sprinkle, and it's night and day. I just soloed the guitars because I wasn't sure if everyone was hearing what I was doing. So we'll take it out, play.
I love it when you do it like that. When you're closer, give me the shivers. Oh, baby, you wanna dance till the sunlight cracks. And when they say the party's over, they will bring it right back. You say, I love it when you do it like that. When you're closer, give me the shivers. Oh, baby, you wanna dance till the sunlight.
And that right there will be the difference when I can hear all my verbs, my effects, and everything a lot cleaner on the phone. You know, because I'm listening on the phone, I'm like, yo, it sounds a little dull, maybe. It's a little nuance like that for me. You know, that sprinkle.
Any compression on that?
That is actually, yes, that's before my I use L3. Again, that's just my thing. For anybody, you know, when you're mixing and you're sending stuff out, remember, people are used to listening to Spotify or whatever they're used to, and things are like mastered and loud. So it's kind of like a cheat code. No matter how good the mix is, if you just send that wave file to someone and it's low, again, it sounds like trash. Because, you know, louder is better. You know, loud is always better. So I always like the L3. But again, last
He's being
point.
facetious when he says louder is always better. That's not. He's saying that's what people say. So
It's the trick. If I came in here and I was trying to sell you something and I was like whispering, you know, you're not really sold. But I give you that energy or whatever, you know, it's like that. And sometimes loudness equates to energy, or it sells stuff. Mm-hmm. That's a better way to say. That doesn't mean go out and like make everything super loud and then your mix is gonna be, you know, all this stuff goes into context with everything else I'm saying. The last detail, like we said, we're going through 5 different songs, so I also had to automate my threshold in this record because every song was hitting differently, but it is one show we're doing here. And it's a show in infamy. It's not a live show where I can get away with little problems here and there because, you know, in a live, you got to move on to the next thing because every second something's happened. So as you can see, each song, you know, again, this is just another fine detail. Don't skip your details. Shivers here, as you can see, we jumped up. Even here between Make It Rain and Overpass, we just loosened it up just a little bit more because on Shivers and Visiting Hours and Bad Habits, you know, I needed sometimes a little bit more. But Make It Rain, it was so dynamic. I didn't want to squash my mix, and I wasn't going for loudness. I was going for more of a breathing type of vibe in the room. So that's why we have these things here. I hope some of the stuff I shared with you, you know, can lead you guys further on to be great in what you do. One of the last things I want you guys though do to remember is that when you do accomplish these things, be proud of what you've done, and don't be afraid to brag and boast because more than likely you've earned it and you've worked really hard to get there. So don't let anybody take those type of joys away from you as you accomplish steps, because in life the only person you're competing with is yourself. You're not competing against me. You're not competing with anybody else in this room. You're just trying to be a better you, a better mixer, a better person. So, you know, always remember that, and like I said, be proud of all your success. It don't matter.
Do you add the saturation on this section?
On the master bus?
On whole section?
Yeah, sometimes I do. Sometimes I use I'll use like a tape emulator. You know, like I said, I'm an older cat, so I'm used to hearing like a 2-inch or a 1/2 inch, run stuff through there. It kind of depends. I kind of do that more on like album stuff. I didn't really feel the need to do this on this because of all the, like you said, the open mics, the room mics, the live. It gave me a lot of analog already type feel to it with all the open mics. It wasn't a lot of digital like keyboards or fake guitars. It was a lot of real room stuff. So I didn't feel I needed to add more harmonics and saturation. Thank you. That was the word I was looking for to this mix. So again, like I said, each situation is different, which is also why I don't necessarily always like use a template, because I'm approaching each mix a little differently. I have the tools and you guys have the tools in your head. So you listen to the thing and then you jump in like, oh, I can use this tool from whatever year I learned or from this session and so forth, and move on like that. You jump in with a template and say, oh, I'm gonna throw these exact same things on their master bus, or there's this same thing on a guitar EQ. You're gonna probably ruin what the client is trying to come across and make. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
In this particular situation, I know obviously you're working closely with Adam. How many people and who actually has like the final say into when you submit your mix? Like, does it go Adam first? He gives you notes, then it goes to Ed's people, NPR. Like, who has that?
I'm last on the chain. if that's what you mean. But no,
He's first to start it and last for the full.
yeah.
That's
My
funny.
like I said earlier, my opinion doesn't matter. I'm just here because I know how to push the buttons and I know how to make it great. I would say, and what it would be is there's a client. There's a client above everyone. He's my client, and then the artist would be his client. And we kind of go up like that, and then talking to, depending who the artist is, maybe the record label is, or maybe their parents are their client. There's always someone up there on the ladder.
Yeah.
But
I do want to say, I'm going to correct James and say we hire him because his opinion does matter. His sonic opinion, his musical ears. He gets what I feel like the artist is going for. You know what I mean? So the other thing that I do want to say is James has 20 years or more in this game. It's like, and I don't mind saying this in front of him, and he would say it to me. If I get called to do a Beethoven symphony, I may go with a classical mixer and then put James ears on it for what I'm comfortable with. If he gets called to do anything where I may not fit as the MD, it's like, also, with us saying this, I think James is one of the most versatile people. But sometimes you don't have to do everything. You know what I'm saying? You save your name by knowing your limitations, right? And so if we think about it in the mix process or category, I may get a budget specifically through COVID that I can't afford James, right? Like, let's just say hypothetically, and I'm like, I'm going to mix it because I don't have the money to pay James, and I think my mixes sound okay, but I invest in myself and in my own brand, and I say, you know what? James is going to take it to this 3 million viewer process. I'm going to give him money out of my own pocket so that it keeps our total brand intact. So I'm saying all that to say, if this young lady does something better than what you do, tune vocals better than you do, and he makes the 808 sounds way better than you do, it's a collaborative ear effort always. You know what I'm saying? And what happens is at the end of the mix, we all get the glory. You know what I'm saying? We all get praised for what we do. It's a total team effort. Now, for me on the mix side, James, it starts with James. You know what I mean? He turns it into me. The artist trusts me and who I hire. So I will tell James, yo, bring the bass up. I want to hear my bass. No, I'm playing. But I will say, hey, the horns this, or maybe it'll be a detail where I didn't like something that one of the musicians may have done in a certain bar. Mm-hmm. Me and him talk bars a lot as well. Yo, bar 67, there was a mess up. Let me give you a punch or something like that if we're doing something pre-recorded. And then he turned it into me. I then turned it into the artist team, specifically label or artist touring team. And 9 times out of 10, we get minimal notes back, or they'll say, this specific event, they pressed us for the stems because I think they wanted to add a little even more on top. How James said, if you're listening to Ed and you're seeing him live, there's nobody up there with him. Yeah. You know what I mean? And even as I think about it, that they're not used to the surrounding warmth that I think James presented. So they asked James to bring his vocal up a little bit more and then bring the background vocals back a little bit because that's just what they're used to. So at the end of the day, like James said, it's their vision. It's the artist's vision. But there is a chain for sure. The mix goes to whoever hired you to mix, you send it to them. Whoever hired me to hire the mixer, I send it to them. Whoever hired that person to hire me, they send it to them. You know what I mean? So as you develop a relationship in the game, they'll just start to trust you. You know what I mean? And I think we were on mix 12 by this, and Super Bowl, we've done mix 33. I think we were on one Super Bowl we were on mix 46.
And a lot of that comes because, you're not in the room with people all the time. Sometimes it can be something very, very minute, but because, the new day and age, we're emailing back and forth. So it's something that if we were all in the room together, 12 mixes could have only been 3 passes, but you're going back and forth and the email. Yeah,
most of the numbers come from me sending it to, you know what I mean? The 46 mix I'm talking about is because that was Shakira, J-Lo, Bad Bunny,
So there was a lot of clients.
So it was a lot of clients. You know what I'm saying? So
you can imagine.
It could be Bad Bunny say, hey, I want my voice up on this one bar. So I got to send a brand new mix with a different mix number, because even though we only changed his 30 seconds of his thing, the whole show has a new sound, a new version. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
so,
sir.
I know like most engineers have like references for different situations. Did you have a reference?
That's a good
like
question.
Room. I know you were there, but did you have like any performance that you saw or another Tiny Desk where you're like, yo, I love that mix?
Yeah, it's funny. One of my mottos is like, ear never lies. I free time I'm always on checking out Tiny Desk. I mixed another one prior to this, and I think it was right before we did this. I hit him one day and I said, yo, this sounds really good. And coincidentally, one of our coworkers who we work with on other projects together all the time actually mixed it. And it's, we all have a similar ear, which is why we can get along, work together. We know what each other wants. And on YouTube, it's, it was I think it was the Fat Joe one, yeah. And
we were like, yo, this
sounds really good.
Because we had just, I ain't going to say who it was, but we had just heard one that wasn't so good.
Yeah, so.
And so we heard another one, and it was Fat Joe, and we were like, yo, this, like, who? I said, let me make a call. I called the MD, my brother Man Roberts. He said, man, Danny Chang, and that's a teammate of ours.
We're all working together actually on the Super Bowl together.
We did the last 2 Super Bowls together, all of us. So, like, I always hear songs and discover new artists or whatever, and I'm like, man, that sounds really good. But for me, mix is everything, and it's like that can make a good song bad. You know what I mean? So think about that when you translate your mix, like what's being said in the song, what are you trying to convey with the artist, and how not to always, I learned this from James, I learned this by watching Jason Joshua as well, how always to not necessarily insert yourself into what that artist is trying to say. The color that they are giving out is their color. You know what I mean? If he ends up bringing his Atlanta-ness to Ed Sheeran, it's going to be a whole different thing. He didn't have to do that. He didn't have to make Ed sound like Future. You know what I mean? And then vice versa. If we bring Ed Sheeran to Future or Young Thug, and it's like we bringing acoustic guitars way up on like a Young Thug record, that's not the sound. It's not the sound. So, go with what the artist is going for. Do your homework. One of the key things he said was, specifically in live, listen to the record. Listen to what made them hire you, and they going on this world tour.
Yeah.
People bought those records. You know what I'm saying? They want to hear the record. Now, we're going to do a little bit of embellishing live to enhance it for that experience. My brother Dante always says, yo, the live version better than the album version. But that's just because we're all together, 20,000 of us in a room, and we're feeling something. You know what I'm saying? But things like Swiss Beats and Timbaland's verses, things like D Nice, Club Quarantine, has proven to me that people just want to hear the record. You know what I mean? James mixes verses live, you know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, I got to be honest and say, they spinning a wave or MP3, and sometimes the artist is singing on top of it, but it still feels good. So, it's really about learning what that record is before you attack it in your own space. You know what I mean? You don't have to recreate greatness at times,
Use the notes in your phone to make notes. And what I mean by this is for reference, because you said reference. I do live. I have 2 songs I play. I have maybe sometimes 3 songs that I play live, because those are the 3 records I know the best. So any room I walk in, any arena, it's like that.
It's supposed to sound
a certain way, but.
Say what they are?
Oh yeah. It's Bob Marley, Naturalistic, Neo, Sexy Love, and then next episode Dre. Like those are my 3 things I use to think. But if I'm in the car and I hear a record and I like the way a kick drum sounds, I'll write it in my notes real quick. Check out the kick when I get back home in the studio, as a reference, like whether I'm trying to make a kick or whether I'm trying to mix something and all that. And it just goes on and on. I actually learned that from Neo with lyrics, because one day he stole some lyrics. It wasn't lyrics I wrote, but it was something I was saying during the day. Then we got in the studio a couple hours later, and he made it a lyric. And he said, yo, I'm making notes all day. So if you're believing in your craft as an engineer, you're enjoying music, but you're always listening. Oh, that's a great effect on that vocal. Or what verb was that on there? And then you go back, and then when you get in your listening room, you actually listen and then let me try to emulate that. Let me try to mimic that, cause make it my own. So always have the ear on, use that. That's why they have that note feature in the phone. It's not just for phone numbers, whatever. It's to make notes throughout the day because you're going to forget. You may say, oh, I'll remember later. You're going to totally forget. And I go, oh, I have a note. Oh, these are samples I like, or these are kick drums I like, etc. And do that. So you have your own catalog of references to refer back to when mixing, live studio, or whatever. Going back to the glam example, I know what I'm good at, what I'm great at, or what I'm not at, and so forth. Dealing with people, I always leave the lane. This is why me and him work good together. He has better quality, certain things he's better at, and vice versa. And you want to get with people like that. You don't want to get it with a bunch of people that always agree with you and always see everything exactly the same way as you are. At the end, you guys can come together, but you want someone to complement your weaknesses and vice versa. And that's actually how you'll get further in this industry.
This is something we can talk about, but like tuning is a whole nother
art
beast.
form. Yeah,
it's a whole nother beast. I like to get a rough mix first, untuned. Because once Jaymz exports the raw vocal that I get tuned, I'm hoping that it can just
drop it in there.
Drop it right in his automation and everything. You see what I'm saying? So it won't change the mix. It's just going to change, the tuning.
I know you have the best of the best in the band right now.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to get an amazing product handed to you.
Yep.
Is there any way we could hear what you got versus what you did? Since like the raw stems versus what you did to it. If not, that's totally cool.
Let's see. I think I have my board mix in here. When I say my board mix, like I said, I was doing monitors on this, so I was just doing a rough 2 mix, and there's no EQ effects or anything like that.
I want to say, first of all, his rough 2 mix is always killing, though. Because that's what I have to live with when I go home. I don't want to wait a week or two for the mix. So it's like I spend a lot of time with him getting our 2 mix right, because when we leave rehearsal or the gig and we need a reference, which is why it's called right here, ref. I need to know what we did. I need to know, dang, I messed up at the end of this song. This is what I'm going to tell Jaymz for bar 46. Or the horns didn't come in right, you know what I'm saying? So the reference is cool, but I already hear the difference from the master to the reference. So let's just play a couple bars of that.
All right, so then we go back to the real mix, and I'll keep the lead out just so you can hear in context how everything was going.
That's no mix, right? Raw stem.
Just from a low end perspective, it's a lot warmer, and then you can hear the
clarity,
width and all of that. So just, like I said, you A/B stuff, and it's like, did I make this better or did I make it worse?
Thank y'all for tuning in to the Sessions Volume 2 with Jaymz Hardy-Martin, the Mix Master, and hopefully you learned a bunch of things that can help elevate what you're doing in the studio and for live. Keep tuning in and check us out for the next one coming up real soon.
Thank you, Tiny Desk.